Celia Braund, a very warm welcome to Plantae Convivae's In Convivium interview series. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me here.
And there's a question that's doing the rounds on podcasts and things like that, which I really I've warmed to. What, as we approach the end of 2025, another momentous year, and on the cusp of another one, I'm sure, what's most exciting you right now in your own life, but also perhaps in the world at large?
Oh gosh, I think it would have to be probably the shift into landscape and into interspecies communication. Something I've been teaching very low key for quite a while now, and the interest in that is just really ramping up now. It's just increased. I've been asked to do advanced work. It's something that people are really engaging with now. So it's an extension of that being in nature. And knowing that it's good for us, but people are actually wanting to listen and to hear, what the natural world has got to say to us now. So that's really, really exciting for me.
Yeah. I guess a lot of the people hopefully listening to this will resonate with that. I certainly do. Now, like me, you're based here in North Devon in the southwest of England. And as with every video I've done for this series so far, it is indeed raining because this is
Mhm.
a land of temperate rainforests where they are allowed to arise. Um, yeah, you're kind of closer to Exmoor than I am. Um, and I invited you on because, I mean, you're a friend, but also you're doing some really interesting work. We can call, I mean, we're all multifaceted human beings, but
Yeah,
for the sake of this interview, we can call you a complementary health practitioner working with
sure.
um, humans and other animals, but also
Mhm.
obviously plants as well.
Yeah.
And Plantae Convivae is all about expressing our power with the vegetal realm rather than over it. Um,
Mhm.
but within the complementary health practitioning, you are a zoopharmacognosy consultant, which is a really interesting line of work. It's something I'd never heard of before I met you. So I'd love for you to kind of unpack what zoopharmacognosy is and how plants kind of come into that. Because I think
Mhm.
we'll get into some very interesting stuff.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, essentially it's to describe zoofarmer, it's a behavioral method of self-selection and self-medication that's performed essentially by non-human animals, but also by lots of humans too. And when I give presentations or talks, I tend to get people to engage with that to understand the process. So essentially, we and it's consultation rather than treatment because it's entirely on the participant's terms. So if I were to go and see an animal, for instance, I would be taking with me a full kit of aromatics, which might take the form of hydrosols, essences, essential oils, dried herbs, powders, plants in lots of forms. And then you engage in a process of offering. For those of us that are old enough and played top trumps as children, it's a bit like that. You offer two products with similar, they're not the same, but have similar properties that might perform a similar action, but giving the animal essential choice every time. So you never offer individually. You offer the plant systematically, um, tracking down different routes. So you might do a pain route, you might do a gut route, you might do an emotional route. There are various routes that we travel down to allow the animal to give us information as to what they're selecting, and we mark, we record the session as it progresses, and pick out their top trump selections, which then they can continue with. We leave them with the guardian to continue the process of offering, and then revisit in a couple of weeks' time. So that's just a really basic overview of how Zoo Farmer works.
Mm.
Um,
It's
and
fascinating, because the reality that domesticated animals still have a very strong sense of what's good for
mm,
them. Um, and I wonder, they're obviously self-selecting,
mhm.
as their wild ancestors and relatives will still do. Um, so there's that angle. But I mean, from your point of view as the consultant, do plants step forward themselves, perhaps earlier in the process, in terms of you selecting which plants to put in front, in terms of this top trump context, the ones that you
Mm.
actually put in front of the animals for them to then select. Is there a two-tier process?
Absolutely. There's kind of a weaving, if you like. So we come at it from I personally, so every practitioner is going to be slightly different. Um, there is the method that we all learn when we enter into zoo pharma. But for me personally, I will always sit before I go to see someone. And I will always sit and download, maybe get a download from the natural world before I arrive. And that might be in terms of what plants might be good for them, what things they're liable to select. And it can go into crystals, all sorts of other modalities. But in terms of the plant realm, then yes, definitely. I quite often get intuited information. I will make a note of that on my consultation form before I arrive. And I will hold that in mind. I don't interfere with the process as such, but I will definitely hold that in mind and be prepared to offer those plants. And very, very often, probably 100% of times now, those plants have shown up in the selection process. And so, to give you an example, I drove to Somerset. In actual fact, it was a long distance meet. I was going to meet, and on the way, I just said, "Okay, okay, universe, what am I going to need today? Or what are these?" I was going to see sheep. What are these guys going to need? And the plants were very insistent. The plants came through as this one is going to need this, one's going to need this, and this one's going to need three different ones. And they all rang true when we got there, which was extraordinary and beautiful and wonderful and all those things. Yes, so there is this kind of weaving together. I don't deviate from a process if I know that I want to. There are particular things you would offer for the gut, etc. But it's also really nice when you're in that place. Quite often you will feel a plant calling you, and just feel guided or led to offer that and see what the results are.
Yeah, because I mean, I know that there are many ways of communicating with plants in particular. Um,
Mm.
but maybe can you kind of elaborate on how they speak to you? Because it's probably more for the layperson kind of more comprehensible that you can be standing in front of a plant like the rosemary bush outside the on our patio here, and you can maybe kind of get something from them in that close proximity, but you're basically drawing it down, much like I always say, all my writings, they come through the muse, and I'm not alone in that respect. It comes from source intelligence, however you want to describe it. It's kind of,
Absolutely.
it strikes me that's where this vegetal intelligence is coming through from the matrix, if you like. Is that a an accurate way of?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd say the relational field. Yeah, for me, it's about the energetic is there, the information is out there. It's time indifferent, and if you open up and you ask for it, the universe will provide the matrix. The relational field will provide it for you.
Mm. Okay, so can you detail a little bit kind of about how it works with animals, for example? I think I recall vaguely you telling me a fascinating story about horses, but you probably got lots of them. But
Mm.
yeah, kind of an example of how it works for the animal in question in terms of, maybe the specific example of, what their condition was, if you're at liberty to say these kinds of things, and then what they went for, what they chose, the medication.
Gosh, okay. I'd probably choose a fairly recent one, which was a youngish German Shepherd dog. I've seen a couple of German Shepherds recently. Have come up, and I went to see this particular dog. I'd met the guardian at a talk that I'd given, and she'd requested I visit. I'd been given a profile of the animal, and she's quite highly charged. She'd got quite very, very, very fast seasons every 4 months, which is very unusual. And so I did a bit of a download for her, got lots of feminine, because I work with women as well, the human context. I got a lot of feminine essential oils and things come through. Um, and so I went when I arrived, and we'd settled. True to form, she chose those particular oils that had come through. Um, And I've seen her a total of 3 times now. And she has completely transformed in terms of her behavior inside the home. Outside is still a bit of a challenge, but it's early days yet. But what was really interesting was when I got there, the guardian, who is very completely new to this and still does it's all a bit too woo woo for me, call. She said, I said, okay, I've got, so in particular, I had geranium and rose and sweet orange come through. And she said, well, look here, felt really guided to get these. And I've just bought these hydrosols myself. So that was incredible.
Wow.
When I went back the second time, I left her with the sample. She was utterly diligent with her homework, sent me videos, every couple of days, made good notes. And when I got back to her, she said, I've been doing the offering and I'm going to continue with it because it's completely transformed my relationship with my husband as well. Because she's through the process of offering, she's inhaling it. She's much calmer. Everybody's nervous system. So this was it was a nervous system hit, a female endocrine system hit. And we basically mediated both the dog and the main guardian simultaneously. So she's had fantastic results. And she messaged me just a couple of days ago and said, if you want to use my dog as a case study, please feel free to do so. She came to the kitchen today and requested her powders, which she has neatly on a shelf in the kitchen now. So that's the dog leading the way as well, which is fantastic.
Well, consider it done. There's the case study. Wonderful. Um,
Yeah.
it's amazing. You make me think of, I remember it was David Haskell, the American biologist's book, 13 Ways to Smell a Tree. And,
Mm,
something many of us know, but sometimes it takes a particular perspective to kind of and wording for us to really get it. But the intimacy of aroma therapy and the volatile essential oils that plants manufacture
mm,
is amazing. The amazing chemists that they are. The fact that you're actually literally taking the plant and communication and meaning and all sorts of goodness, the Viriditas, Hildegard von Bingen's Viriditas, this
yeah.
vital greening living force and
Mm,
healing force into our bodies. But yeah, it's a very intimate process. Um, and how, the fact that it can not just influence the target animal, but also that local contextual field and the healing is kind of like uh, ripples out. It's a wonderful, wonderful story. Um, are there many zoopharmacognosy consultants in the UK, for example, even in the Southwest?
yeah, there are quite a number. There aren't many in North Devon. In fact, I don't know anyone else who's done the same training as me, but there's definitely a network across the UK.
Mhm.
And again, it's increasing. The interest is big. And I think some people do it just for their own personal satisfaction for their own animals, but there are lots of us out there too doing what I
Mhm.
do.
Mhm.
It's interesting you mentioned the greening, because I did sit for a minute last night and just say, okay, have you got anything that you need me to present to Pete tomorrow? And the plants themselves actually did say you need to green your thinking, and green through literally through the veins. So we need to be and to think more plant, which I thought was really lovely.
Viriditas. Well, there's a post coming up on my Substack platform uh, specifically on this term Viriditas, which I got from first, I think, from my the late great mentor who I never got to meet, Stephen Howard Buhner in the
Mm.
States,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
who wrote a lot about Viriditas, which obviously was coined by Hildegard von Bingen, I think 12th century um, Benedictine abbess and polymath, which was quite something
Yeah,
for the time.
absolutely
Um,
incredible.
yeah, and yeah, that kind of that greening force. Um,
There's a
yeah, it's
vitality with it.
I think you could there's a case for saying this is a big part of what has been dubbed. I mean, there's a broader shift at play that you spoke to at the beginning, but one way of framing it is the context of plants and the vegetal realm is this vegetal turn phrase, which I
Mm,
love. There's a larger probiotic turn, and um, the fact that um, And you kind of, I was going to ask you this question later in the interview, but you kind of spoke to it, I say, at the beginning, um, whether you'd noticed, sensed a shift in public perception, um, in terms of the vegetal turn and away from this other term that's often been used, plant blindness, because we just take plants for granted. But I think in so many ways they're speaking to us. This viriditas, if you like, is kind of seeping into our consciousness and our awareness, in subtler or more profound ways. That's I assume this is what you're picking up on as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I really like that. I always reflect back on the Celtic take on things where you see yourself as an extension of the landscape and
Mm.
vice versa. And for me and the people that I'm dealing with, that I meet, on my daily basis, yeah, it's very much it is they are they're coming into our space really to let us know,
Yeah,
and they want us to hear them.
yeah, yeah.
They've got such wisdom for us.
Oh yes, that I am learning rapidly. Um, do you have any favorite plant allies? I mean, I know that's always a tricky question. Pete, what's your favorite plant? I'm like, oh, where do you start?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I'm going to ask you anyway. Do you have any favorites, or at least regulars, in terms of the plants that you work with?
that come up for when I'm working sessionally.
Yes, or a lot of herbalists are always inviting people to pay attention to the plants that appear in their locality, whether it's that
Oh,
that
100%.
regularly hated weed that always appears in every garden I've ever had, or whether it's a much loved plant, in the same scenario, because those plants can very well be carrying perhaps quite specific and medicinal messages for us. So whether it's through your work or, plants that you have kind of a long-standing personal
Yeah,
relationship with. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think for me, a long-standing personal relationship would be rose.
Mm.
Um, and that goes back a long, long, long way for me. You're right to childhood, really. And just fantastic healing property. I suppose that, so the important thing really for me is that as practitioners, we tend to be drawn to certain types of work, or we draw certain types of clients to us. And I do tend to get a lot of nervous system, a lot of female hormonal, endocrine issues and that kind of thing. I will get lots of other stuff too, but that's a regular feature that's come up for me, and that's one that I have a background history of knowing from. So that definitely comes up. I think probably also I would probably speak to the seasonality of things. I like to, so my work, I tend to mesh lots of, so the intuitive, the learned knowledge. But I think for me, it's also really important to work with the seasonality. So things don't exactly come in and out of favor, but they become more prominent at different times. So, and when if I teach interspecies communication, for instance, I will get people to journey with plants that are available at that time. So maybe May, it might be the hawthorn, which is another favorite of mine. We might do flower work in the spring and hip work in the autumn. Gorse is a fantastic one. So I really enjoy some of the journeying herbs that we use, that ancestrally, that wisdom has been passed down, because they are fabulous. And I suppose also, yeah, no, yeah, I would get into the fungi realm as well. So I don't know, lots and lots of favorites. Um, Lichen is one I really, really enjoy. I suppose having grown up by the sea, um, seaweed and algae are really, really powerful for me. Really powerful for me, and actually really powerful in for the animals. That's coming up a lot in terms of organizing their microbiome. So obviously their gut brain, lots of gut brain axis, cranial sacral work coming up, because it's so rich in they're rich in antioxidants. And I think algae I have so much respect for, because it's just the oldest plant in the world. It's just a fabulous thing, isn't it?
Mm.
Um, Lichens obviously that meeting point, because I tend to favor liminal spaces, so I like the working together with lichen. Um, yeah, so does that in a really messy way, does that kind of answer it?
Yeah, no, there's lots for people to kind of riff with there. Yeah, I'm reminded of uh, I think he's Exeter in Devon, a mycologist named Christian Taylor, I think, who
Okay.
during an event maybe a couple of years ago, he kind of gave the insight that when we look at a woodland or a forest, it's the kind of, that original symbiosis of lichen, plants, and fungi. It's that
Mm,
same relationship, but turned inside out.
okay.
Whereas, with a lichen, you have the fungal structure encasing the algal plant. But in a forest, you have the plant, if you like, encasing
Okay.
the fungal, whether it's literally in its roots or within the kind of context of the forest. And yeah, it just kind of it resonated. But obviously, it's a different scale, and after a long time of evolution. So it's just really interesting that
Mm,
life can dance in that way, if you see what I mean.
mm, mm.
Um, and of course, we know a lot about lichen because it's
Living
a key,
here.
a key, key characteristic of our temperate
Mm,
rainforests. And
mm.
seaweed generally is really coming to the fore. I mean, mushrooms, are mushrooming
Yeah, yeah.
big time in our societal awareness. But seaweeds too, for many reasons. Some um, overtly utilitarian, but I think irrespective, there's a lot more respect. The respect is growing for who, more importantly, who these
Mhm.
beings are, and
Yeah.
Stephen Buhner wrote a lot about not just how they're the planet's finest chemists, but that these secondary metabolites, quite often these phytochemicals, are generated not just for the benefit of the individual plants or the collective vegetation, but also all the life in that locality, you know,
Mm.
and the benefits of these phytochemicals might, they're they might be active and doing what they need to do over time spans much longer than we can comprehend. There's shorter and longer time scales. But yeah, that it's how wonderfully generous plants are. And I think, the indigenous cultures, as he observed, are well aware of what plants offer and how generous they are and how fundamental, foundational to life on planet Earth, you know, um, they
I
are.
think they're incredibly patient and incredibly kind, and they're waiting for us to catch up.
Yeah, patient, that's a good word, isn't it? Because they do live more slowly. And I think I'm certainly
Mm.
for a long time have been feeling the invitation to slow down. I think if we all just slow down, don't rush
Absolutely.
to answer emails. Just there's so many ways we can slow down and be like a plant in so many ways as well, And
Mhm.
there's some great writers like the philosopher Michael Marder who've written about not just and Sydney Cale, who I interviewed in number two of this In Convivium series, um, of not just thinking about plants, but thinking with plants and being like plants. It's an aspect of biomimicry in many ways, and there's so much, yeah, so much we can learn.
I think
So
it's that
much we can learn.
stretch.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, stretch beyond our five sense perception, to just to going beyond sense perception altogether, and
Mhm.
embracing that and inviting that in. And that's the point at which you merge, where the boundaries get quite blurry. And I really like that, where we soften our edges, and move into that space, and as you said, do a dance. We dance with it, and you merge into the landscape. You undulate with the landscape and with the plant realms.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What's your favorite um, way of connecting with your immediately local ecology?
Hmm. I probably have two or three ways. Quite often I will sit with water. Water's big for me. I will sit with water, and whether that's in, at home or outdoors, or otherwise being out, being with it.
Mm, mm.
And I think it's interesting. One thing I learned when I first when communication first really popped up for me, if you like, it's probably been a very ongoing process, but the worry about what time of day it was, whether the animal was sleeping or whether this was, and then tapping into that vibrational field and suddenly realizing that actually time is not relevant. There's continuity and the information is available, was really, really nice. So if I want to tap into my local ecology, I feel I can pretty much do that at any time that it calls me to. Um, I guess my favorite would be out walking with it and just feeling the land rise to meet me. And but always asking permission and being present with where I am. Yeah.
Great, thank you. We're coming to the end of our time for this interview. Um, now, so I'm going to ask you, as
Mhm.
is the standard, where can folk go to
Okay.
find out more about your work, whether that's a website or whatever, and maybe they want to contact you, but maybe you can also outline um, the kind of offerings, the range of offerings that you tend to have. So, for example, we've spoken about interspecies communication, and that can be, still for some people, although woo-woo is dissolving to a great extent, I think, these days. But they still think, well, yeah, I get the idea of being able to communicate with plants, but I'm still not really clear how I go about that or how I can
Mhm.
start. And if you kind of have, offerings that can help with that, that would be great. So over to you.
Sure. So my business name is White Horse Holistics, nice and easy, White Horse Holistics. And you can just search the website and all my contact details are on there. I also have a Facebook page by the same name, but there's a direct link on the website to that as well. In terms of offerings, it's very simple. I have three modalities. They are healing, massage, and aromatherapy or herbal law, so the plant realm, if you like. And those three things are woven across both humans and animals. And in terms of the interspecies communication, so I do run walks, talks, workshops, etc. Sorry, my dog is barking in the background. um, and in terms of the interspecies communication, I run it on an introductory level, which takes people right from the basics. And we do some basic healing work, some grounding, attunement, teach people protection, and how to step into the realm right from the word go. And then I'm now next. I've been requested to run advanced courses, so I'm putting on an advanced course next year as well. And that currently, I've used a few locations, which has been really wonderful. Currently, I'm hosting it at a nature recovery project up on Exmoor. You mentioned Exmoor earlier on, right on the north coast. It's a National Trust owned site, but we have full permission there to work with the full range of species, which are both animal. So we've got longhorn cattle, Exmoor ponies, Mangalitsa pigs, but then right into the greater landscape. And a really beautiful thing happened the last time I was up there, just in October. I had some students up, and one of the students had a visual of the landscape, but hundreds of years ago. So we're really working that landscape connection work now. So yeah, that gives. Is that okay?
I'm sure it is. Yeah, there's lots for people to riff with there if they
Yeah.
wish. Um, and I can personally recommend you because I've been a recipient of your skills and wisdom. So yeah, no, brilliant, brilliant work. And thank you,
Okay.
Celia
Thank you.
Braund, for being on In Convivium. We've done it. We've done it. And
Brilliant.
yes, I'm sure we will connect again offline very soon. But yeah,
Okay.
no, thank you. And good luck with everything in what promises to be another momentous year, but heading in the
Mm.
right direction despite what we might see on the mainstream news. So, um, namaste or equivalent. And yeah, thank you again for being on In Convivium.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting me.
All right. Thanks, Celia. Bye bye.